Today I am going over the 2024 United States Senate map, and I'm going over every single state's polling average, courtesy of realclearpolitics.com, and I'm assigning the state the current characterization of the polling average. So just for example, let's say Hawaii is the Democrat plus 20, I am putting Hawaii as a safe Democratic state. Again, that's just a hypothetical example. And I'm just real quickly, my scale that I'm using is 1 point or under is tilt, 1 point to 5 point margin of victory is lean, 5 points to 10 point is a likely, and 10 points or more is safe for the candidate. So with that out of the way, I'm going to start up west with the state of Washington. The state of Washington in the Senate map. Let's see, right now in the Senate race, there's not the average done for us, but the two polls that have been done have the Democratic incumbent up 20 and up 9. That's going to average over 10 points, which is enough to put Washington, the state of Washington, into the safe Democratic column. I'm also going to hold off on a few of the seats that I know are very contested, and I'm going to circle back to them at the end of the video and talk more about them because I think they deserve a little bit more time because how close they are. So I'm just going to brush through some of the states I know that really aren't too competitive. So next we're going to go to the state of California, where we're going to go to California right now. And in this state, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff is running against Republican Steve Garvey. It is a 23-point race according to the average. That would obviously put California into the safe Democratic state. Nevada, it's an interesting development. It's not exactly a toss-up right now, but I do want to talk about that one more in depth. So I'll just skip right down to the state of Hawaii. Hawaii, the Senate race. Let's go down here. There is no polls currently conducted, so this is the first time I get to do this. Let's look at the past Senate results for the state of Hawaii and just see how they went. In 2022, the Hawaii Senate race, the Democratic incumbent won by 45 points. And that means back in 2018, the race that's currently up now, the incumbent then won by 42 points. So we can reasonably assume that the state of Hawaii is going to be a safe Democratic state. That's how that's going to work. Now we're going to go to the state of Utah. The state of Utah right now, this is Mitt Romney's seat who's not running for re-election. There's no polls currently conducted for this. So in Utah in 2022, Republican Mike Lee won the race against the independent McMullen by 10 points. And then back in 2018, Mitt Romney won the seat by 31 points. In a Republican versus a Democrat, I think we can assume pretty strongly that Utah will be a safe Republican seat. Now real quickly, we'll go to the state of Wyoming. Let's see, Wyoming right here. There's no polls for John Barrasso, the incumbent Republican, versus the Democratic candidate. So in Wyoming in, 2018, this was the last time this race was up. Barrasso won by 37 points, or Barrasso, excuse me. And 2020, the Republican incumbent won by 45 points. So Wyoming is certainly going to be a Republican seat. Montana we're going to come back to because that's a very, very important one I want to talk about. North Dakota, the Senate seat in North Dakota. Let's go up here, see if there's any polls. There are not any polls. Kevin Cramer, I know for a fact he won the seat back in 2018 because this was a flip over the incumbent Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp. 10.8 points he won that seat by. 2020, they did not have a seat. In 2022, the Republican won with 31.4. This time around, I think it will be over 10 points. It was the time when he first ran too, but he's not running against a Democratic incumbent this time, so that should be a safe seat for the Republicans. Now we'll go to Nebraska, where Nebraska is actually very, very sneakily under the radar, interesting races in the state. And I'm not sure if they have both Nebraska's second or special race on here or not. I'm not sure if they have that. But in the special election with Ricketts versus Love, this one we fully expect to be a safe race. Let's see if we can find 2020 where Sass is on the ballot. That was a 38-point race. In 2018, when Fisher was on the ballot, it was a 20-point race. So that should be safe. But I know there are some polls that actually show the Fisher race to be competitive. I'm going to try and find these for you right now. So the special race is projected to be safe, and I do apologize, the Real Clear Politics did not have it, so I did have to go to Wikipedia to find this, but on 538, the race between the Republican incumbent Deb Fisher has 42.8%, the independent candidate Dan Osborne, her top challenger, has 38.7%, with 18.5% undecided in the average, and even a recent poll by Survey USA showing the independent to be leading in this race. Now, there's obviously a lot of undecided vote, and in my personal opinion, I do expect Deb Fischer to be able to hold on and win this race, but I can't ignore the polling average in this one because I knew this was a very close race. So I have to put it at 4.2%. It's over 1, it's under 5. Nebraska at large would actually be a lean Republican seat, which is very, very interesting because I guess if that seat were to be leading with the independent candidate, I would have to make an independent title next to it. But Fisher's in the lead, so we'll give her that one in lean. So if you see a lean Nebraska, it's because the independent is actually running very strong in that seat. Now we'll go to the state of New Mexico because like Arizona, Texas, I also would like to talk about a little bit more. The state of New Mexico, the Senate race up here between Democratic incumbent Martin Heinrich and the Republican challenger is currently a 10-point lead. That is enough by the thinnest of margins to put the state of New Mexico into the safe Democratic column. 32 for the Democrats right now, 43 for the Republicans. Next, we'll go to the state of Minnesota. Minnesota, I believe this is Amy Klobuchar, is up for the election this time. Yes, she is, and she is leading in this race, but 11.7% in the polling average. She actually had 2 polls in a row now where she had 11 points, both Rasmussen and Star Tribune Mason-Dixon. And then Survey USA had her plus 14. The Hill Emerson plus 11. Pretty strong consensus that she's in a very good position to win this Senate seat. Not much of an argument there. Next, we'll move down to the state of Missouri. Missouri, this is going to be Josh Hawley's seat. First one back in 2018. One of the first videos. Actually, I think that might be the first video I ever made on my channel was Josh Hawley versus Claire McCaskill. Not Heidi Heitkamp, excuse me. And this time around, the average does not have an average on top, but there's enough support to tell just by doing quick math in my head. This will be over 10 points, which means we can firmly assign Missouri to the safe Hawley column. Definitely a different characterization than it was back in 2018, where he only won by a few points. Now in the state of Mississippi and Tennessee, let's start first with Tennessee. Tennessee, this is going to be Marsha Blackburn's seat, and she is leading by 17.5% in the average. That can put Tennessee into the safe Republican column. The state of Mississippi, I would not be totally shocked if there aren't any polls in this one. I did not think there would be. So let's go back. Let's see, 2018, Mississippi, 19 points in this one. Also, there's a special election. I don't think the special is the one that's up this time around. Yes, it's not. Okay, so it would have been the 18-point one, which means we can put Mississippi into the safe Republican column. Just got to make sure, because the Senate races can get jumbled up, but I'm pretty sure this is the main incumbent, not the special one from 2018 and then 2020. So 46 seats for the Republicans, 33 for the Democrats. Now we'll go to the state of Indiana, because there are a lot in this region in the Rust Belt that are very competitive Senate races. The state of Indiana and its Senate race, let's go right here. Scroll up to Indiana, and there are no polls in this race. It is an open seat. I believe this is Representative Jim Banks is running for this one for the Republican side. And back in 2022, the Republican incumbent won there by 20 points. 2018, against a Democratic incumbent, Mike Braun won by 6 points. Not facing a strong Democratic challenger on the same level as an incumbent, I think it's pretty safe to say we can call Indiana as safe for the Republicans. Now we'll go to the state of Virginia. The state of Virginia, where I believe it's Democrat Tim Kaine running up against Republican Hung Kiao, and it is a 10.2% lead for Tim Kaine in the state of Virginia. Just by the thinnest of margins, we can call Virginia as safe Democrat. It'd be interesting to see if the presidential race is a little bit closer in Virginia. If the Senate race maybe down ballot will get a little closer as well, but right now safe for the Democrats. The state of West Virginia, once upon a time, this looked like it would have been one of the most competitive races this cycle, but incumbent Democrat Joe Manchin has decided not to run for re-election, and I believe their current Republican governor, who's going to be term limited in 2 years, has run for term limited this year, has run for this seat, and he's won the primary, and it's no surprise. Look back at 2020, the Republican incumbent won by 40 points. 2018, Joe Manchin was able to win by 3, but that's because he was Joe Manchin, the incumbent senator. It will be much closer to 2020 than 2018. West Virginia is now a safe seat for the Republicans. The state of Maryland. Actually, we're going to come back to Maryland, because this one I feel like is worth talking to, too. We'll go to the state of Delaware first. As you can tell, I want to really talk about the ones I find very, very interesting at the end. A 20-point lead for the Democrat in the state of Delaware. Not too much of a surprise here. Delaware, we can say, is safe Democrat. The state of New Jersey, this is Bob Menendez's seat that he's resigned from. Now I believe it's Democrat Andy Kim going up against his Republican challenger. Kim is +9. It's only one poll, and I don't think it's going to be under 10 just because we look back at the history of New Jersey. It was 16 points in 2020. And let's see, in 2018, when Menendez had a scandal plaguing him, it was 11. I find it a very hard time finding New Jersey being under 10 points, so it'll be safe for the Democrats. Now the state of New York. Let's go to New York really quick. Kirsten Gillibrand against her Republican challenger. She's led by 23 points in both polls. I think it certainly suggests she's going to win with over 10% of the vote. New York goes safe for the Democrat. Now let's go to the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut, I believe this is Chris Malloy's seat. Or no, it's Murphy's seat, excuse me. Let's see, no polls there, so we'll go to the recent history. 2022 was a 14.9% win for Blumenthal. 2018, Murphy won by 20.2. We can certainly expect that Connecticut will be over 10 points. That'll be a safe Democratic seat. In the state of Rhode Island, let's see. No polls for Sheldon Whitehouse. Let's check the past results. 2018, Whitehouse won by 23. And in 2020, the last race in Rhode Island, it was a 33-point lead for, I believe it's Jack Reed. That will certainly be a safe Democratic state, no doubt about it. The state of Massachusetts, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let's see, she won very big last time in 2018. I know that for a fact. Okay, Massachusetts does not have a page. It redirects to a blank screen. That's fine. I know it's Elizabeth Warren versus John Deaton, the Republican challenger. In 2020, Ed Markey won the seat by 33.1 points. In 2018, Elizabeth Warren defeated Jeff Deal by 24.2 points. I think we know pretty much for certain that Massachusetts will be a safe Democratic seat. Now we'll go to the state of the state of Vermont, where it's Bernie Sanders up for re-election. No polls have been conducted here. But in 2018, Bernie Sanders won with 39.9% of the vote. And in 2022, Peter Welch, the representative who ran for Senate, following the retiring Pat Leahy, 40 points win there. So we know Vermont is going to be a safe Democratic state. And now Angus King, I believe, is going to be the last of like the really non-competitive races in Maine. We'll go up to Maine right now. I believe he has a large lead. Oh, he has a 10-point lead in one poll by UNH back from the middle of August. Let's also just take a quick look as well as some past election results. Susan Collins, obviously, the incumbent Republican, won by 8.6. Can't really apply that too much because there's not a Republican incumbent in the race. Angus King last time won by 19.1. I think it's more likely than not King will probably win this race by over 10 points. Maine's a little tricky because, of course, Susan Collins is a Republican incumbent who's been there a while, so you can't really apply that to this election because there's not a Republican incumbent up in Maine. So right now, Democrats have 42 Senate seats, Republicans have 48, according to the polling averages. Now we're starting to get into the races that I really find fascinating. I'm going to start down south in the state of Florida. This is a race that, at the beginning of the year, I really didn't expect to be all that close in the polls, and boy was I wrong. Because right now in the latest polling averages, Rick Scott has 46.3% of the vote to the Democratic challenger, Debbie Mercarsel-Powell's 42%. And you may be saying, okay, well, it's a 4.3 race. What's the big deal? Well, on the same point, Trump is leading in the RCP average in the state of Florida by 6 points. So Rick Scott is underperforming Trump by 1.7%. And Florida's polls underestimated Trump in 2016 and 2020, so you could make an argument that perhaps that's happening again. He might win by a bigger margin than the polls say. You could make that same argument for Rick Scott if you want. But Marco Rubio won the Senate seat in Florida, and I'll get the exact numbers for you, in 2022 by 16.4%. 16.4% in 2022. Let's look back at 2018. Rick Scott defeated Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson by 0.12%. And if you're asking me, does this race look closer to a 12-point win or a 1-point win for Rick Scott? The polls seem to suggest it's a 1-point win. So that's why Florida is very interesting to me. That being said, he has a 4.3% lead, so he does have a lead in this seat. But according to the polls, it would only be a lean Republican seat. It would not be a likely or a safe seat. Whereas the presidential race right now would be lean, or would be likely, excuse me, for Donald Trump. It would be lean for Rick Scott here. So that's a very, very interesting one that I believe I saw a report that Democrats are going to start putting a lot of money into Florida because they see these polling numbers and feel like they have a decent shot at trying to take down Rick Scott. And if the polling is accurate, which, I mean, of course, is an election, so it's always big if polling is accurate. If it is accurate, then the race is certainly within reach for the Democrats if they have a very good night. Now we're going to go up north to the state of Maryland. Maryland, this is a very interesting one because there's a retiring incumbent, so it's two new candidates. However, one candidate, the Republican challenger, is Larry Hogan, who was the former governor of Maryland, got first elected in 2014, and I believe served until 2022 when he was term limited. And he had a very high approval ratings while in office, and he's making this a very close race. If you saw my presidential video I did for this, going over all the polls, Trump was losing Maryland by over 20 points. Hogan's only trailing this race by 7.6% in the average, which it would be, instead of a safe seat like the presidential race, is a likely seat for the Democrat here. And it's shown the Democrat is starting to poll much better in the last few days and last few weeks. Earlier in the election cycle, this is only like a 3 to 4 point race. The Democrats starting to get a little bit more of a lead as I think the more partisanship gets closer to the election, especially in such a heavily Democratic state. But it's very, very interesting because for a moment it looked like the Democrats may have to actually spend some serious money and effort in Maryland and hold the seat. Now it's starting to look like the Democrat is starting to break a little more, or is starting to move a little bit in the Democrats' favor. But still, this is a very fascinating race of kind of like a challenger versus a former governor and what the name ID of being a governor or senator before has in a seat. It shows that in a very Democratic state where Larry Hogan was well approved of, he's running a very strong race for such a Democratic state. So I really find this race interesting. That being said, still, the Democrat is favored. It's a likely seat right now. I fully expect her to win on Election Day, but still, it's very, very interesting. Now we're going to go to the state of Texas. The state of Texas, where this is going to be Senator Ted Cruz up for re-election. And back in 2018, he had a very, very close race where he defeated Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke by only 2.6% of the vote. And I'm sure he's probably hoping that this time around he would have a easier race. And according to the polls right now, I mean, slightly easier race maybe. The polling average has Cruz up by 5 points. Only 3 polls, one from the Hill Emerson from just last week where it was Cruz plus 4. So certainly this is a race that Democrats are probably feeling optimistic about because it is relatively really close. The only difference between, say, Rick Scott in Florida and Ted Cruz is actually running pretty equal with how Trump is running in the state of Texas. So if Trump outperforms the polls at all in the state of Texas, which I honestly expect that he might a little bit, then I think Ted Cruz would probably coattail that effect as well and do better. But Ted Cruz is no stranger to very close competitive races in Texas, and we might be seeing another one here again. At least the polling data certainly suggests so. Texas, 5 points. That would be just enough to put Texas into the likely column just by the thinnest of margins. It's actually 5 points exactly, so you can make an argument for lean or likely. I'm going to put it as lean, but you could really make an argument for both. So that is Texas. Now we're going to go up north and work our way west. We're going to start with the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a very fascinating race. This is Bob Casey, the Democratic incumbent senator, running against Republican Dave McCormick, who, by all intents and purposes, against such a powerful incumbent, has been running a very strong race from a lot of reports. He's trailing right now by 4 points, and as you see down the chart, the race actually started out with a 9-point lead for Casey for a while. And really since the spring and summertime, McCormick's been able to narrow this gap of the race down to 4 points, where at the 1 point it even got down to 3 points, and it's starting to get a little close. Casey grew his lead a little bit, and now McCormick's starting to go back up. It's a very, very interesting race. And as I mentioned, McCormick seems, from what I've seen on X and Twitter, whichever you prefer to call it, McCormick's been running a strong campaign up against a strong incumbent. Casey right now I'd say is still favored to win the seat, and +4, that would be a lean Democratic seat. But it makes you think that maybe in 2022, if Republicans nominated McCormick instead of Dr. Oz, that maybe they might have been able to defeat John Fetterman in that Senate seat. Of course, ifs and buts, like you never really know, but a 4.9% win for Fetterman, maybe McCormick would have outperformed Oz, made that more of a competitive race. I mean, that obviously that's hypothetical, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Nonetheless, I think it's a very close race. Definitely one to watch for. I think Bob Casey is certainly favored to win right now, and the polling average has it at +4. Now we're going to go to the state of Ohio, a very, very close race. One that I actually think that the polls and I think disagree on. Democratic incumbent Sherrod Brown is 3.7% lead right now over Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. And full disclosure, in my personal opinion, I think this will be the surprise flip on election night where Moreno will actually win this race. I think Donald Trump's going to win the state of Ohio somewhere between 8 and 10 percentage points. And I think just by a 1 or 2%, that will be too much for Sherrod Brown to hold on to. But the sake of this video is polling averages, so I'm not giving my opinion on this seat. I'm just going off what the numbers are. The numbers are 3.7%, so I'm going to assign Ohio as a lean Democratic seat. But I certainly think that on election night, if this seat flips red, I would not be shocked one bit. In fact, I think it will happen and it will flip red on election night. But Sherrod Brown is a pretty unpopular Democratic incumbent. He's been in tough races before, both in 2018 and back in 2012. 2018, he won the race by 6.8%. That was an election where I believe the Republican won the governor's race. And back in 2012, he won the race by 6 points. So he seems to do a very good job and typically even outperforms the top of the ticket Democrat as well. So Sherrod Brown certainly a very battle-tested incumbent, but I think this election might be a little bit too much where Trump's going to win the state by 8 to 10 points. That remains to be seen, but the polls have him as a lean Democrat, so that's where he is in this video. Now we're going to go to the state of Michigan, where this is an open seat. This is one where there's a retiring Democratic incumbent, and Congresswoman Elisa Slotkin is the Democratic candidate, and Republican former Congressman Mike Rogers is the Republican candidate. This is one where the Democrat has a 4.4% lead in the polling average, and it's pretty much remained a pretty consistent lead of about 4 to 5 points for Slotkin being ahead. The only caveat here that I see that might want to give Democrats some pause is Slotkin's support of 47.6 is pretty cemented and pretty in line with where Kamala Harris's support is in the state of Michigan, maybe 1 point or 2 points below it. Whereas Republican Mike Rogers at 43.2 is like 4 or 5 points below where Donald Trump is right now in the state of Michigan. So this could be a situation where on election night, if the polling is off in the state of Michigan where Trump outperforms the polls, there could be a situation where Trump is able to drag Mike Rogers closer to his total. And that may actually be like a surprise boost that puts a little bit of scare in the Democrats, maybe enough to even flip the seat. I'm not saying that's absolute. I'm just saying there is a lot of undecided vote in this race, so that could be something to watch for. I still personally think that Slotkin will win this Senate race, but I do think it's just something that there's a lot of undecided vote, and maybe a hidden Trump vote on election day could boost someone like Mike Rogers more than other potential Senate seats. But again, that's hypotheticals. We have to wait till the election day to find out. 4.4% in this seat. That is a lean Democratic seat. Next, we'll go to the state of Wisconsin, where there's Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin running up against Republican Eric Hovde. This is a seat that's actually narrowed a lot in the last few days, where Baldwin was up over 50 for a decent while, and she even had a point of about 6-point lead, 7-point lead at times, and now the race is down to 3.6%. This is certainly getting close. This is getting close as the presidential race in the state is getting close. Kamala Harris has had a lead by about 1 to 2 points in the state of Wisconsin for a while now. That lead, as of today that I'm recording, is down to 0.8%. So as that race narrows, it seems the Senate race is narrowing as well. The only difference is Tammy Baldwin here is outperforming Kamala Harris in the state by about half a percentage point. And Eric Hovde is underperforming Donald Trump in the state by about 2 percentage points. And so that might be something, again, if the polling is accurate in this, that's certainly not a good sign for Hovde's chances. Baldwin is certainly favored to win. If the polling is off in the state of Wisconsin like it was in 2016 and 2020, well, then I think this is certainly a seat that is not as perhaps unwinnable or unbeatable that maybe it seemed like it would be a few years ago. I think right now, I think Baldwin's still favored to win this seat, but this is certainly one to keep an eye out for. 3.6%, a lean seat for the Democrats, very, very close. This will probably be Tammy Baldwin's toughest fight. She was up for election back in 2018. She won the seat that time by 10 points, or 10.8 points against Leah Vukmir. And I believe Vukmir or Vukmir, I forget. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. I believe it's Vukmir or Vukmir. And then back in 2012, she defeated the Republican challenger by 5.5 points. So this seems to be the closest matchup she's had in a while. And it'll be interesting to see how this race goes. Certainly lean Democrat this time, but very, very interesting. The state of Montana, this is one that has been the Republicans' top target, besides from West Virginia, for a while now. And right now, the Republican challenger, Tim Sheehy, leads Democratic incumbent John Tester 50 to 44.8. This is now actually outside of the lean column into the likely column for the Republicans. This is, as I mentioned, the number one target for Republicans. This is the most Republican of all the Democratic incumbents that are up for re-election this time. If you look back to 2018, honestly, it's very surprising Tester even held on back then. He defeated the current Congressman Matt Rosendale by 3.6% in a very, very close election. Back in 2012, just for curiosity reasons, he won that race by 3.7. The hyper-partisanship in elections now is much stronger, so it seemed like Tester would be in a lot more trouble, and it seems the polls certainly show that. Again, 5.2% of the lead right now in Montana. It certainly seems like Sheehy is favored to win this seat and win it by over 5 percentage points. That gets Republicans to 57, Democrats to 47, narrowly giving the Republicans the Senate majority, and of course the Senate as well. Now we got two more seats, one in Nevada, one in Arizona. We're going to go first to the state of Nevada, where Democratic incumbent Jackie Rosen is facing off against Republican challenger Sam Brown. This race has been very interesting because for such a very tight state that Nevada is at the presidential level, I believe it's less than a 1% difference between Trump and Harris in the polls in the state of Nevada. At the Senate race, only one poll has had this race really, really close. And that was the last poll by Atlas Intel that showed it to be a 2-point race. Every other poll has had it at least 7 points or more. And it's kind of been a bit of a surprise to me because you just think of Nevada as such a swing state at the presidential level that I'm shocked to see a margin this big. But Jackie Rosen, the incumbent, is 49.3. Sam Brown, the Republican, is 40.7. And this will either be one of the bigger swing state blowouts on election night in terms of the Senate races, or this will be one of the biggest polling misses of all of the Senate races on election night. Right now, though, the polls say 8.6. That would be a likely Democratic seat for Jackie Rosen, the incumbent senator. And also, just for the sake of argument, I'm just going to show you 2018, where she was first elected. She went up against Republican incumbent Dean Heller and defeated him in this seat by 5 points. This time, she's facing a Republican challenger, so maybe that's why her numbers are performing a little bit better. Remains to be seen. And then also, just for curiosity, back in 2022, Catherine Cortez Masto, Democratic incumbent, defeated Republican challenger Adam Laxalt by 0.78%. So certainly very close races in the state of Nevada, which is why, again, this number kind of confuses me. That's 8.6%. I thought the race would be closer, but maybe the polling's correct and she's cruising for a very big election win. Maybe the polling's off and we're going to have a much closer call on election night. We'll have to wait and see. But that's the state of Nevada, 48 for the Democrats, 51 for the Republicans. We're going to finish off with the state of Arizona, where it's Democratic challenger Ruben Gallego against Republican Kari Lake, the former governor candidate from 2022. This is a very, very interesting race to see that Gallego is up 49.3% to Kari Lake's 43.5%. At the same time, Donald Trump is leading Kamala Harris in the state of Arizona by 2% in the polls at the time that I'm recording this. And yet, Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, is leading Kari Lake by 5.8%. And it's really actually easy to understand on this one. Gallego's support is only about half a point to 1 point higher than what Kamala Harris's support is. But for some reason, Kari Lake's support, despite being very policy-wise almost the exact same as Trump, is underperforming Trump by about 6 to 7 percentage points, which is the main reason why Gallego's leading here by so much. This is a very, very fascinating race that, again, I wouldn't be shocked if the polls are a little bit off on election day and the race ends up being like a 2 or 3 point race. But it seems like right now the polling's been pretty steady. Gallego has a 4 to 5 point lead, and at 5.8%, that's actually enough to put Arizona into the likely Democratic column. So based on the current polling averages as of right now in Real Clear Politics, Republicans are favored at 51 Senate seats to win the Senate, Democrats to narrowly miss control of the Senate at 49. And I'll be honest, there really isn't too much on this Senate map that I disagree with. I talked about the state of Ohio and Nevada and potential polling misses there. But again, those are all hypotheticals. Those are by no means set in stone that what I was saying is correct and that the polls are wrong. I think that it's just my opinion. It's not fact. But it's very interesting. I think Ohio, certainly has the potential to flip. I think Nevada has the potential to be much closer. But, I mean, a little over a month out from the election, I think the Senate map is very, very realistic, and I can certainly see this being the final map on election day and election night. I would not be surprised one bit. That will do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a like. And if you really liked it, please remember to click the subscribe button. And make sure you turn post notifications on so you always get notified when I post a new video. That way you never miss one. Also, please remember to share this video with your friends and family if you really, really, really like the video. And remember to stay tuned because I'll be posting at least one video every single day leading up until election day. So I'd really appreciate it if you keep coming back and watching those videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.